December 18, 2016, the Westfield Mall in Sacramento buzzed with holiday shoppers. Christmas music floating above the din of conversations and rustling bags. 11-year-old Lily Chen trailed behind her Aunt May, occasionally stopping to admire. Window displays of toys and clothing. "Can we go to the bookstore next?" Lily asked, tugging at her aunt's sleeve. "I want to see if they have the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid." May Chen checked her watch. "Sure, but we need to be quick. Your mom wants us home by 5 to help with dinner?" May was distracted, juggling shopping bags while texting her boyfriend about evening plans. When they reached Morgan's Books, Lily's eyes lit up at the colorful young adult section. "I'm going to look at the graphic novels," Lily said, pointing to a display across the store. "Okay, stay where I can see you," May replied, already scanning the bestseller shelf. "I'll be right here." The store was crowded, shoppers brushing past each other in the narrow aisles. They found a novel she'd been wanting to read and flipped through it, occasionally glancing up to check on Lily. After about 10 minutes, she closed the book and looked for her niece. The graphic novel section was now occupied by a teenage boy in a hoodie, but Lily wasn't there. May wasn't immediately concerned. Lily was responsible for her age and knew not to leave the store. "Lily," she called, moving through the aisles. No response. She checked the children's corner, the reference section, even the small cafe at the front of the store. No sign of Lily. A flutter of panic rose in May's chest. She approached a store employee, a young woman with a name tag that read Emma. "I can't find my niece," May said, her voice tightening. "She's 11, wearing a red sweater and jeans, black hair and a ponytail." Emma immediately alerted the manager, who made an announcement over the store's speaker system. "Attention Morgan's Books customers. We're looking for Lily Chen, age 11, wearing a red sweater. If you see her, please alert a staff member." No one responded. The next hour passed in a blur of escalating panic. Mall security was called. They reviewed footage from cameras positioned at store entrances. In one frame, at 3:42 p.m., Lily could be seen near the graphic novels. In the next sweep of the camera, at 3:47 p.m., she was gone. By 5:30 p.m., Lily's parents had arrived, frantic and disbelieving. By 6:15 p.m., the police were involved. By nightfall, the first news vans appeared outside the mall. Lily Chen had vanished without a trace in the 5 minutes May had looked away. The first year after Lily's disappearance nearly destroyed the Chen family. Helen and Thomas Chen, Lily's parents, initially clung to hope, appearing on local news. Then national programs like Dateline and 2020's, Lily's school picture showing her bright smile and the slight gap between her front teeth became familiar to millions of Americans. May moved out of Sacramento, unable to bear her sister's grief-stricken glances. Though Helen never openly blamed her, May blamed herself enough for both of them. She relocated to Portland, changing her name to May, cutting her hair short and rarely speaking of her past. Detective Marcus Rivera led the investigation, which yielded frustratingly little. Security footage showed nothing suspicious. No witnesses remembered seeing Lily leave the bookstore. No registered sex offenders had been identified in the mall that day. It was as if Lily had simply dissolved into the holiday crowd. The case gradually cooled. Other missing children replaced Lily on the news. Tip line, once flooded with calls, fell silent. The FBI agent assigned to the case was transferred. Only Rivera kept the file open, reviewing it monthly, even as new cases demanded his attention. By the second anniversary of Lily's disappearance, the Chens had separated. Thomas threw himself into his engineering work, while Helen devoted herself to a missing children's advocacy group. Their comfortable suburban home, once filled with Lily's laughter and piano practice, stood empty and for sale. On the third anniversary, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an age-progressed photo of what Lily might look like at 14. It generated a brief flurry of tips, all leading nowhere. By the fourth year, Rivera had been promoted to captain and rarely had time for old cases. The annual press conference marking Lily's disappearance drew only one local reporter. In the fifth year, Thomas Chen moved to Michigan for a new job. He and Helen quietly divorced. Helen stayed in California, still hoping for news of her daughter. And then came the 6th year, and with it, something no one expected. October 3rd, 2022. Evelyn Summers pushed her wire-rimmed glasses up our nose as she sorted through a box of used books. As the owner of Timeless Pages, a small bookstore in Tacoma, Washington, she prided herself on personally inspecting every purchase for her inventory. She lifted out a well-worn copy of The Secret Garden, flipping through the pages to check for damage. A slip of paper fluttered to the floor, an old receipt. Evelyn would have thrown it away, but something caught her eye. Scrawled in the margin in blue ink was a brief message. "I am Lily Chen, missing since 2016. Not allowed to speak. Please help. We live at Green." The message cut off abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. The receipt itself was from a grocery store in Tacoma, dated just 3 weeks earlier. Evelyn's hands trembled as she set the book down. Like many Americans, she remembered the case of the little girl who vanished in a bookstore. Could this possibly be genuine? She turned the receipt over. Nothing on the back. She examined the book again, flipping through each page. No other messages. The book had come in a collection purchased from a local estate sale the previous weekend. Evelyn debated what to do. It could be a cruel prank, or a coincidence. Perhaps someone named Lily Chen had written the note for entirely different reasons. But the reference to being missing since 2016 was too specific to ignore. She called the Tacoma Police Department. Detective James Harlow arrived 30 minutes later. In his 15 years on the force, he'd investigated numerous missing persons cases, but none that had begun with a note in a used book. He carefully placed the receipt in an evidence bag. "We'll look into this," he assured Evelyn. "Can you tell me exactly where you got the book? The Whitman estate sale on Elm Street?" The family was clearing out their grandmother's house after she passed. "Did you notice anyone unusual at the sale? Anyone who seemed interested in this particular book?" Evelyn shook her head. "I bought over 50 books. This one was just in the mix." Harlow made notes, his expression neutral but his mind racing. The Lily Chen case was well known in law enforcement circles, a textbook example of a stranger abduction with no leads. If this receipt was genuine, it would be the first real break in 6 years. "Miss Summers, I need to ask you not to mention this to anyone. If this is legitimate, whoever has Lily might be monitoring news and social media." Evelyn nodded solemnly. "Of course, but do you think it's real? Could she really be here in Tacoma?" Harlow chose his words carefully. "We'll check the handwriting against samples from before her disappearance. We'll look into any properties or businesses in the area with Green in the name." As he left the bookstore, Harlow called his captain. Within hours, the FBI was notified. By nightfall, agents had obtained security footage from the grocery store that issued the receipt. The grainy video showed hundreds of customers over the day in question. Among them, for just a few seconds, was a teenage girl with dark hair, accompanied by an older woman. The girl kept her head down, but in one frame she glanced up at the camera. Facial recognition software gave a 72% match to the age-progressed photo of Lily Chen. In Sacramento, Detective Rivera received a call that jolted him fully awake at 2 a.m. for the first time in years. He allowed himself to feel something dangerous. Hope. Girl vanished while shopping with her aunt. 6 years later, a receipt found in a bookstore reveals. Helen Chen's hands shook as she stared at the printout Detective Rivera had placed before her. The grainy security footage showed a teenage girl, who might be her daughter, 6 years older. "We need to proceed cautiously," Rivera explained gently. "The FBI is handling the Tacoma end of the investigation. We're checking every business, street, and property with Green in the name." "It's her," Helen whispered, her finger tracing the blurry outline of the girl's face. "I know it's her." Rivera had seen this before, the desperate conviction of parents who'd viewed dozens of potential sightings over the years. But something felt different this time. The specificity of the note, the date alignment, the facial recognition match. It was the most promising lead they'd ever had. "We're flying you to Tacoma tomorrow," he said, "but you'll need to stay at a hotel under FBI supervision. If this is Lily, we can't risk alerting whoever has her." Helen nodded, already pulling out her phone. "I need to call Thomas." In Tacoma, A task force had assembled with remarkable speed. Agent Diane Foster, a 20-year veteran of the FBI. If this mystery has you on the edge of your seat, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to Gone Cold. Your support helps us uncover more true stories that deserve answers. Presence. We observe and identify. Detective Harlow, partnered with FBI agent Sato, was assigned to the grocery store where the receipt originated. They reviewed hours of footage tracking the teenage girl and her companion as they moved through the store. The woman, approximately 60 years old, with gray hair pulled into a severe bunt, paid in cash, leaving no electronic trail. She never looked directly at the cameras. She knows where they are, Sato observed. Look how she angles her body. The girl, however, had glanced up twice, once at the entrance camera, once at checkout. Those brief moments might prove crucial. She's trying to be seen, Harlow said, just like with the note. By day 3 of the investigation, they had narrowed the list to 17 green locations within a 5-mile radius of the grocery store. Satellite surveillance identified 3 as particularly promising based on security measures and limited access: Green Pines Gated Community, Greenhouse Educational Center, and Greencrest Farm. At the FBI's Seattle field office, Helen and Thomas Chen sat in separate rooms, each with a crisis counselor. Despite their divorce, they'd arrived together, united in their renewed hope and terrible fear. They provided updated information on Lily's identifying marks: a small birthmark behind her right ear, a scar on her knee from a bicycle accident, the slight gap between her front teeth. As night fell, Agent Foster gathered her team. Tomorrow, at dawn, we begin simultaneous surveillance on our primary targets. Remember, if this is Lily Chen, she's been held captive for 6 years. She may be traumatized, confused, or emotionally dependent on her captor. Our priority is her safe recovery. The agents nodded solemnly. Many had children of their own. Understood the stakes. In her hotel room, Helen Chen clutched her daughter's favorite stuffed Rabita-worn plush toy she'd brought to every interview. Every search, every vigil for 6 years. "We're coming, Lily," she whispered. "Hold on." Greencrest Farm sat on 15 acres of rolling land at the edge of Tacoma. From the road, it appeared to be a typical small-scale, organic modest house. A large greenhouse, several outbuildings, and fields of vegetables. A hand-painted sign offered fresh produce and honey for sale at a small roadside stand. Agent Sato and Detective Harlow observed from an unmarked van disguised as a utility vehicle. For 2 days, they'd watched the property, documenting the movements of an older couple who operated the farm. The man, identified as Edward Walsh, 64, worked the fields and managed the roadside stand. His wife, Margaret Walsh, 62, divided her time between the house and the large greenhouse. No sign of the girl, Sato noted, lowering his binoculars, and no one matching her description has approached the farm stand. Harlow studied the satellite imagery on his tablet. The greenhouse has no windows except on the roof. Perfect place to hide someone, or to grow sensitive plants that need controlled light, Sato countered. We need more. Their opportunity came when Edward Walsh drove into town for supplies. Agent Foster authorized a knock and talk, a seemingly routine visit under the guise of agricultural inspectors. "Allo?" And Sato approached the front door, clipboards in hand, wearing plain clothes with subtle identification. Margaret Walsh answered, her expression guarded. "Good morning, ma'am," Harlow said pleasantly. "We're with the County Agricultural Extension Office, doing routine checks on greenhouse operations in the area. Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Margaret's posture remained stiff. "My husband handles all that. It's not here." "We can come back," Sato offered, "but we're really just collecting basic information. Crop types, irrigation systems, that sort of thing. Helps us track growing trends in the region." Something flickered in Margaret's eyes. Calculation, perhaps. "I suppose it's fine, but be quick about it." She led them through the house, neat, sparse, with few personal touches, and toward the back door. As they passed the kitchen, Harlow noticed something odd. A deadbolt on the pantry door, locked from the outside. The greenhouse was larger. Up close, an impressive structure of glass and metal. Margaret unlocked a heavy door and ushered them inside. The humidity hit them immediately, along with the rich smell of soil and growing things. Rows of vegetables stretched before them, tomatoes, lettuce, herbs, all meticulously tended. "As you can see, just standard crops," Margaret said tersely. "Nothing exotic." Sato moved down one row, Harlow another, both scanning for anything unusual. The structure was divided into sections by tall shelving units. As Harlow rounded one such divider, he spotted a small desk with a chair, books stacked neatly beside it. A workspace, seemingly for a student. "Do you homeschool?" he asked. Casually, Margaret's expression tightened. "My granddaughter visits sometimes. She likes to study here." Harlow noticed a book open on the desk, The Secret Garden. His pulse quickened. "Must be peaceful," he commented. "Is she here today?" "No," Margaret said quickly. "She's with her father in Seattle." As they continued the tour, Sato signaled Harlow with a subtle gesture. He'd spotted something, a cot tucked behind a row of tall plants, partially hidden by a curtain. Beside it sat a small chest of drawers. This wasn't just a study space. Someone was living in the greenhouse. They completed their inspection without revealing their suspicions, thanking Margaret for her time. As they drove away, Harlow contacted Agent Foster. "We have probable cause for a search warrant. Greenhouse has living quarters. The book from the receipt is there, and there's an abnormal security setup, including a locked pantry inside the house." Foster didn't hesitate. "I'll have the warrant within the hour. Maintain surveillance. If the girl is there, we move today." The tactical team assembled a mile from Greencrest Farm, their vehicles hidden behind an abandoned barn. 12 agents, in tactical gear, reviewed the property layout and entry points. Agent Foster briefed them on their primary objective: the safe recovery of the possible hostage. Subject is believed to be a teenage female, potentially Lily Chen, missing since 2016. Consider her traumatized and approach with extreme caution. The suspects, Edward and Margaret Walsh, should be treated as dangerous but contained with minimal force. Helen and Thomas Chen waited at the command post, accompanied by 2 crisis counselors and Detective Rivera. If Lily was found, they would be brought forward at the appropriate moment, not before, to avoid complicating an already volatile situation. At 3:42 p.m., Edward Walsh returned to the farm. Surveillance reported both suspects were now inside the main house. The timing was optimal. "Execute," Foster ordered. The raid unfolded with precision. 2 teams approached, simultaneously, one to the house, one to the greenhouse. They moved swiftly across the property, weapons ready but not raised. Inside the house, Edward and Margaret Walsh were secured without incident, though Margaret became hysterical, screaming that they had no right to invade her property. Edward remained eerily calm, asking only if he could make a phone call, a request that was denied. At the greenhouse, agents entered through 3 separate doors. They moved methodically through the rows of plants, calling out their presence. Agent Sato reached the back section first. "FBI, if anyone is here, please identify yourself. You're safe now." Silence. Then, barely audible, a voice responded from behind the curtained area. "Are you real?" Sato lowered his weapon completely. "Yes, we're real. We're here to help you. Can you come out so we can see you?" Slowly, the curtain moved aside. A teenage girl emerged, thin and pale, her dark hair pulled back in a neat braid. She wore jeans and a faded green sweatshirt. Her eyes, wide with fear and disbelief, darted between the agents. "My name is Lily Chen," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I've been missing for 6 years, 2 months, and 15 days. Sato activated his radio. "Package secure." "Repeat, package secure." Agent Foster entered the greenhouse moments later. She approached Lily slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Lily, I'm Agent Foster with the FBI. We found your message on the receipt. You did an incredibly brave thing." Lily's composure began to crack. They said no one was looking for me anymore. My parents had given up. They never stopped looking, Foster assured her. They're here now, nearby. Would you like to see? Them tears filled Lily's eyes. She nodded, unable to speak. As medical personnel examined Lily, agents searched the greenhouse and house thoroughly. The investigation was just beginning, but initial findings painted a disturbing picture. The Walshes had no children or grandchildren. Edward Walsh had worked as a janitor at Westfield Mall in Sacramento 6 years earlier. Financial records showed they had moved to Tacoma 5 years ago, purchasing the farm with cash. Most damning was the locked room in the basement, a windowless space, carefully managed. Lily would need immediate psychological support. There would be questions, statements, evidence to process. The case was far from over. As Helen and Thomas were driven toward the farm, none of that mattered. After 6 years of unimaginable absence, their daughter had found a way to bring herself home. The small conference room at the Tacoma FBI office had been carefully prepared, comfortable chairs, soft lighting, water, and snacks available, but not intrusive. Dr. Vanessa Rodriguez, child psychologist specializing in trauma recovery, waited with Lily. Are you ready? Dr. Rodriguez asked gently. Lily nodded, her hands fidgeting with the sleeve of the clean sweatshirt they'd given her. In the 24 hours since her rescue, she'd been examined by doctors, briefly interviewed by specialists, and given time to rest. Now came the moment she'd dreamed of for 6 years. The door opened. Helen Chen entered first, then Thomas. They stood frozen, taking in the sight of their daughter, no longer the 11-year-old from their memories. Ooh. But a 17-year-old young woman with the same dark eyes. Mom? Dad? Lily's voice broke. Helen moved forward first, slowly as they'd been instructed. Lily, she whispered, my beautiful girl. They embraced carefully. Then Thomas joined them, and the three sank into a huddle of tears and whispered affirmations. Dr. Rodriguez observed silently, watchful for signs of distress, but saw only the painful, beautiful process of a family beginning to heal. I never stopped looking for you, Helen murmured into her daughter's hair. Not for one day. I wrote you letters, Lily told them, in my head. Every night. Thomas, usually stoic, wept openly. We're here now. You're safe, is the initial. Overwhelming emotions settled, they sat together, still maintaining physical contact, a hand on an arm, fingers intertwined. There's someone else who wants to see you, Helen said. When you're ready, your Aunt May. Lily tensed slightly. She blames herself, doesn't she? Helen nodded. We all did in different ways. But none of us knew what would happen that day. It wasn't her fault, Lily said firmly. I want to see her. When May entered now, with short hair and a different name, she stood uncertainly at the door. Lily rose and walked to her aunt, taking her hands. It wasn't your fault, she said simply. May broke down, 6 years of self-recrimination releasing. In deep, racking sobs, Lily held her, the child now comforting the adult. In that sterile government building, surrounded by agents and doctors, the Chen family began the delicate process of becoming whole again. The details emerged gradually over the following weeks. Edward and Margaret Walsh had been arrested and charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. With more charges pending as the investigation continued, in carefully monitored interviews with specially trained agents, Lily revealed the story of her captivity. Edward Walsh had approached her in the bookstore, claiming her aunt had been injured and sent him to find her. Once outside, Margaret was waiting in a car. They drugged her with something that made her sleepy and drove her across state lines that same night. They told me my family had died in a car accident, Lily explained to Detective Rivera. They showed me fake newspaper articles they'd created. They said they were distant relatives who had agreed to take me in. For the first year, they kept her isolated in their Sacramento home, homeschooling her and rarely allowing her outside. When questions from neighbors became too persistent, they moved to Tacoma and purchased the remote farm. Margaret wanted a daughter, Lily said. She made me call her mother. Edward just went along with whatever she wanted. The psychological manipulation was extensive. They monitored all media she consumed, created elaborate stories about the outside world being dangerous, and convinced her that no one was searching for her anymore. But they had underestimated Lily's resilience and intelligence. She pretended to accept her new reality while secretly maintaining memories of her real family. She hoarded small pieces of information about the outside world, and she watched for opportunities. The receipt was my third attempt, she revealed. The first 2 times I tried to leave notes in library books we returned, but Margaret always checked them first. The breakthrough came when Margaret, confident after years without incident, allowed Lily to hold items at the grocery checkout. In that brief moment, Lily had grabbed the receipt and a pen from the counter, scribbling her desperate message before Margaret noticed. Later, when Margaret sent her to retrieve a forgotten item, Lily slipped the receipt into a book on a display near the exit. I didn't know if anyone would find it, she said, but I had to try. FBI investigators discovered more disturbing evidence in the Walsh's home journals, documenting Margaret's obsession with having a daughter. Research on other missing girls and detailed surveillance notes on Lily and her family dating back months before the abduction. Most chilling was a hidden album containing newspaper clippings about another missing girl from Oregon in 2013. Agents were now investigating whether the Walshes were connected to that disappearance as well. 1 year later, Lily Chen sat on the porch of her parents' new home in a quiet suburb of Portland. The trial was over. Edward and Margaret Walsh had been sentenced to 25 years to life. The investigation had linked them to at least one other attempted abduction, though the Oregon case remained unsolved. Helen and Thomas, reconciled through the ordeal of recovery and trial, had relocated to give their family a fresh start. May, now using her birth name again, lived nearby and visited often, her relationship with her niece stronger than ever. Lily's recovery was ongoing. Some nights still brought nightmares. Certain triggers, the smell of greenhouse plants, particular. Foods the Walshes had favored could still induce panic. But she was healing, supported by therapy, family love, and her own remarkable strength. She had returned to formal education, working with tutors to catch up on the gaps in her learning. Though the Walshes had taught her academic subjects, their curriculum had been selective and distorted. Lily attacked her studies with determination, already planning for college. On this warm afternoon, she was reading not The Secret Garden, which she couldn't bear to look at anymore, but a new novel recommended by her English tutor. Beside her sat Evelyn Summers, the bookstore owner who had found her message. They had met 6 months after the rescue, when Lily felt ready. Shared a monthly lunch, united by books and by the extraordinary connection forged through a single slip of paper. "I've been thinking about working in a bookstore someday," Lily told Evelyn. "Books were my escape, even when I couldn't physically leave." "You'd be wonderful at it," Evelyn replied. "My offer to mentor you still stands whenever you're ready." Inside the house, Helen watched her daughter through the window. The pain hadn't disappeared for any of them. The years lost could never be reclaimed. But Helen had learned to focus on the miracle rather than the tragedy. Her daughter had found a way to come home. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, including May and Detective Rivera, a close friend, Lily shared her latest accomplishment. "I finished my college application essay today," she announced. "What did you write about?" Thomas asked. Lily smiled, the gap between her front teeth still charmingly present. Resilience. And how sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places like a bookstore receipt. As they raised their glasses in a toast to her future, Lily felt the familiar mix of emotions that characterized her new life: gratitude for her freedom, grief for the lost years, determination to move forward, and above all, the profound knowledge that she had saved herself. Somewhere in Tacoma, an empty greenhouse stood abandoned, its dark secrets now exposed to light. And in Portland, a young woman who had once vanished without a trace was writing a new story, one entirely her own. And now, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think really happened to her, and how did that receipt end up hidden for so long? Share your theories in the comments below. Don't forget, like this video, subscribe to Gone Cold, and help us bring more unsolved cases into the light.